Good morning. It's Monday, October 7th, 2024, 9 a.m. This is Muscatine County Board of Supervisors. I'd like to call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is to review the agenda.
Move to approve.
Have a
Second.
motion by Nathan, a second by Scott. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Item number 3 is a public hearing on a proposal to dispose of 2 plots at Greenwood Cemetery by gifting them back to the owners who previously donated Muscatine County for indigent burials. So we are now in a public hearing. Anybody wanted to wish for or speak for or against, come to the podium, state name and address. Saying no one come forward, I'd accept a motion to close the public hearing.
So, second.
Have a motion by
Good one.
Nathan, a second
Sure,
by
why
Scott.
not?
This is a roll call vote. Scott?
Aye.
Nathan?
Aye.
I vote aye. Danny?
Aye.
And Kurt?
Aye.
Okay, the next item, discussion and possible action to approve resolution 10-7-2401, authorizing the disposal of the county-owned real property.
I'll move.
I have a motion by Danny,
Second.
second by Kurt. Any discussion? This is a roll call vote. Scott?
Aye.
Nathan?
Aye.
I vote aye. Danny?
Aye.
And Kurt?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, item number 4 is items with Planning and Zoning Administrator Eric Furness. Item A is discussion of possible action authorizing the chair to sign a contract amendment with Bi-State Regional Commission for a comprehensive plan update service.
Morning.
Good morning, Eric.
Yeah, I think I touched on this a week or two ago that this would be coming. We just want to make sure that we have adequate time to get this right, and with just some of the, we didn't have a lot of participation in some of the early public input feedback sessions we've had, so we've really been hammering down on some of the details and areas of interest with the steering committee. They've been talking to people in the community, trying to get more input. So we just want to extend the deadline out to January 31st of 2025. It's more or less a contract for the deliverable with Bi-State. There's no additional cost. The sum that was approved is the same. We just want some more time to make sure that we have a good product to take to the zoning commission for consideration and then recommendation to you folks. So
This was extending it to the end of January, is that correct?
end of January, yeah.
So we'd expect probably, then the commission will have to do it, and then there's a public hearing
So,
process. So
yeah.
we're probably late spring next year before we have any updates.
Well, I think we'll be pretty close to getting, the public hearings done by this point in adoption. We just need to have a few more, because we're going through the chapters right now, the revisions and proposed language, the steering committee. We've gone through about 6 different chapters of the comp plan that have been updated with the language that the discussion has yielded. So we'll start getting those things scheduled this winter. So I don't think the full adoption is gonna be too much more delayed. This is just giving us time for a few more steering committee meetings, then we get those public hearings scheduled, so.
Okay.
I'd move.
I have a motion by Danny,
Second.
second by Nathan. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Anything else, Eric?
I don't think so. We'll talk about the courthouse stuff a little bit later.
Okay, thank you. Well, that's next. Items with Mike Nolan, Horizon Architecture. Item 5A is discussion of possible action approving change order number 4 to install plywood sheathing over built-in gutter concrete substrate on the Muscatine County Courthouse roof on a time and material basis not to exceed $18,641. Good morning, Mike.
Hey, good morning. So just a little bit of background. So obviously, we talked a little bit about the roof last week. We're starting to get the clock tower, the coppers coming on with that. And what we've had is a lot of moving parts in place as Renaissance has gone through and done some preliminary explorations, taken off some of the lower sheathing, kind of figuring out what's going on with some of the substrate. And probably about a month and a half, 2 months back, we talked about some additional masonry work. When we talked through with county staff, the other part that we were concerned about was we had the additional masonry work, we had potentially evaluating the existing battens and sheathing that's on the rooftop. So a lot of those pieces have just come together here in the last week or so. So This particular piece for the gutters, just to situate, we have the clock tower roof, we have the flat roofs, and then down at the base of the pitch roofs, there's some integral gutters that are concrete formed with some stone around the perimeter. When Renaissance pulled those pieces up, what they found was that the concrete substrate underneath, they were concerned about the proper way to get the copper liner back into that, so their recommendation was to install plywood sheathing to that and then use that for the copper liner. And this was based off of, as they were pulling back the layers, they found some failure of the previous copper guttering, that they also suggested a different install method. So long story short is this is going to be an improved way of installing the new copper gutter liner that was not anticipated. They had previously proposed a lump sum. We reevaluated that and kind of kicked back to them and said, hey, we understand that this is something that needs to be done, but we think it should be done in a time and materials. So recommend that this work is approved to be done. It's kind of a modification to what they originally anticipated. So this would just be an additional layer, which would not necessarily be sacrificial, but it's going to be better for their fastening, and it's going to limit the amount of penetrations and more or less fasteners will have to get into the existing concrete for the long term. So that's part one for this particular piece.
Okay. So this is gonna be, they're putting a sheeting down, they're gonna attach that to the concrete, and then they'll attach their copper into that treated, this is like a treated plywood, so it should be a
Exactly.
30-year ground contact kind of stuff.
Yep. And I think what they'll do is they'll have the plywood, there'll still be an underlayment underneath that, and then the copper will go over top. The other part that they modify is that there's more of an expansion joint at the base of the, when the slates go back in, so there's gonna be kind of a two-part to allow a little bit of flexion expansion in the copper, which was not previously there on the old, which probably led to some of the copper failure, and in that since been covered up with either a membrane or even a fluid applied. So what we're doing is really truly future-proofing this to make this a 100-year detail.
I know there's been quite a few change orders. Do you have an idea how much that's added up to so far?
I don't have the exact numbers on that. I think Eric's been doing more of the,
'Cause that's outside of what we budgeted for, right?
Well, I talked to Kayla a little bit about that this morning, you know, we're still within our contingency amount on our budget, but, you know, it's obviously, there's a couple, if you look at the next one, there's a couple of items in here that are eating pretty significantly. We still, with these change orders, we still have a reasonable amount of contingency, but I think the big question, and what I haven't heard back yet, was on the, checking the attachments on the decking. I know Terracon was in, and I don't know when we're gonna hear back on that, but, you know, the big, to me, the big risk one still out there is, are we gonna have to tear off that whole roof, or are we gonna have, is that, you know, are we gonna be able to reuse the attachment technique?
and that's a great segue. So I didn't know if you wanted to run through these one at a time, but if you do want me to just talk through everything, and then we can come back to the individual, I guess,
I
requests.
think we just take them one at a time is probably the best. So what do you wanna do? Are we, any other comments, questions about this? And this is for the integral gutter work, so this
That's correct.
takes care of that.
Yep.
And I think if we recall, we had an issue with that integral gutter when we did a number of, Kurt and Danny, you wouldn't have been here, but a couple of years ago when we did the courthouse, the district court renovation up there, we had to rebuild a whole wall section where it come down and it was leaking inside the walls, so this is important work to get this done, and that was the way these buildings were designed back then.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Eric spoke to last week. There's some interior plumbing work that we're doing to revise some of those drain leaders, that was separate from the Renaissance work. And there is still one spot that we did repair everything we could on the interior on the district courtroom, but you can see there is one small area where we're still getting a little bit of plaster damage, and we think that that's from the gutter tie-in up at the rooftop level, which will be addressed with this. Again, we tried to do the best we could at the time with kind of a Band-Aid treatment, understanding that when we did this entire replacement, that would get addressed appropriately, so.
And that's actually been done. Kelly Cooley came in and did those tie replacements. We had tried to see Rapids and find some specialized product to do it. Half of it's done as they work, that's ongoing, so we're taking care of that.
But that's not, that doesn't address the small issue still in the courthouse, or in the courtroom?
It eventually will. So what we're doing is everything that we can see working our way up. When these new gutters are put in, and basically the tie-in for the entire system will be corrected.
Okay.
Well, we've been holding back the rain as long as we could, so.
We're about dried
Looks
up.
like you got another week of it anyway, so.
Okay.
I'll move to approve.
I have a motion by Nathan,
I'll second.
second by Kurt. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Item B is discussion of possible action to accept a quote from TNT Tuck Pointing and Building Restoration of Stockton, Iowa, in the amount of $167,450 for tuck pointing and masonry repair work on the Muscatine County Courthouse.
Okay. All right, so to your point, yes, we have been waiting on the results of the pull testing. We had Terracon on site, I think about a week and a half ago, and what they found is the existing batten system, it's a 2x4 with a 2x12 or 1x12 tongue and groove overlayment over top of it. So in conjunction with Renaissance, we expose a certain portion of the roof to determine the fastener spacing and then to do some pull-out testing. So Terracon has a specialized machine that basically pulled until they failure on the anchors to determine what the existing hold down is. Through that, we determined that it was a sleeve type anchor with a lag bolt, and the anchors had various holding from anywhere from about 300 up to 500 pounds per square foot, or 500 pounds per anchor. And then we're also able to get an approximation of what our hold down pattern was for the anchors on the battens. Structural engineer did a preliminary evaluation of that and determined that, without getting too far into it, essentially you do design pressures on the kind of the field, the main portion, and then when you get to the perimeters and the corners, you have additional design pressures based off of wind. What the engineer determined was that the field was fine, but he would like to do some additional anchoring around the perimeter. We determined that the best approach for that is not going to require a tear off of the entire roof. Is essentially he's going to prescribe a fastener pattern and product that, as Renaissance is going through, we will likely see additional change order from them. As they're doing tear off, they can put the additional anchors in place and then proceed with their work. So we do not anticipate, or not at this point would not recommend a full tear off, because there's a retrofit solution in place that should be nominal cost. So what we've been discussion amongst the county staff is, with the remainder or a portion of the contingency money, where do we want to put that funding? And we were holding that if we had to do the tear off, that was going to be obviously a significant cost. So what we had done when when Renaissance first got up to the clock tower and looked at the masonry, they provided us a change order quote for, and I don't have the exact number, but I think it was somewhere north of $250,000 to do the masonry work. Prior to starting the contract, Jim had asked us to line up some local qualified, basically contractors that would be our alternates to come and look at some of that work. We had Josh Schmeiser of TNT Tuck Pointing come and do an independent evaluation of the clock tower and all the masonry on the roof, and that's where his quote came here for the $163,000. We've looked at what Renaissance offered against what Josh offered. It's not a 100% apples to apples. I think Josh actually has additional scope in here, but for the cost, there is significant savings. Josh is a known actor. He's done several projects with him. About a year ago, TNT did some retrofit work of a similar nature to the old Hotel Muscatine at here in town, and they actually did original tuck pointing on the courthouse, I think about 15 years ago. So very qualified, competent bidder. They do a lot of historic preservation and restoration. Now, there is one other piece I do want to discuss. So the integral gutter system, which we just approved the underlayment for, there is a perimeter stone around that, which when Renaissance did the tear off, they found that the anchors on a portion of those had come loose or were degraded. Their recommendation was to take off and reset all the stones in place around the perimeter, which would have been significant cost. We discussed with Josh to give an alternate, and he did. Came late, but he did propose an alternate solution, basically to do a tieback, a helical anchor, so we would not have to. And you can pass this around if you guys want to take a look at it. This is a solution. Sorry. It's called a stitch tie. It's a solution we've worked on several projects where you don't want to have to take everything apart, but just to selectively re-anchor. Basically, it's a tie that replaces in place. he'd be able to do that around the perimeter of the gutters. So that would keep Renaissance moving, get that work done soon. They could continue with the gutter relining, and then from that point should be able to move forward with the remainder of the rooftop. The additional on that was $15,812 to do the entire perimeter, and that's 2 layers. There's a capstone and then a base stone. So the total that we would be looking for TNT is actually $183,262. In that work, again, Josh has gone up and done an independent evaluation. I think there was one alternate on there, which was to repaint the base of the clock and do some of that work, which I think while we're up there, we might as well have access to the scaffolding. In our discussions, I think that if we do this, kind of given the progress of the tear off of everything we've seen, the likelihood of discovering anything else that is gonna be a large dollar value for a change order, we think that we've kind of done a pretty good analysis of what's there. And this should just basically put a path forward to get forward with completion of the project.
There's no large looming questions yet, no, so we know that the roof can support the load, we know we've got the anchors figured out. Yeah, so did we have any kind of a number? I mean, pulling that whole cap and resetting, that'd be a major job, wouldn't it?
And I think we did get a number, we did not get an independent.
$269,000.
Yeah.
Pull that system in the old
To
slate.
pull all the way around the top, pull all the cap and reset the blocks, and then you probably,
Same thing, Eric?
Oh, no, it's
They're 2 different things, I think.
we did not get a number to pull the cap and reset the block, so that's that perimeter. So I think what Eric is answering is if we had to remove the batten system. and
cause
put
that would be
it
the
back
entire
in place.
perimeter of the courthouse, right?
Well, actually, there's 2 levels. There's a cornice, which they're actually proceeding with work on. So that's kind of, I was thinking, we're working from the outside in, from the top down. So the outside is there. Now we're kind of working our way up. At the base of the pitched roof, there's 2 kind of horseshoe-shaped integral gutters. So that's only, and I did a takeoff on it, I think it's about 250 linear feet. It would be time-consuming, and honestly, most of them are in okay shape, and with this system, they'll be able to kind of make minor adjustments and re-anchor
I mean, you'd be looking at $50 a linear foot minimum, wouldn't you,
easily.
Mike?
Yes, I think that this is a much more cost-effective.
This is a
and-
mechanical
It's
device.
Yep. So they'll do a mechanical fastening, it gets a little pilot hole, and then they come back and patch with a, basically matching mortar. It's nothing that's visible from the ground, so, at some point, if we could take everything apart and rebuild it block by block, that would be ideal, but, obviously dealing with time and budget here, so we're trying to find the good long-term solutions that aren't gonna break the budget.
So this item doesn't say that it's a change order, but I wanna make sure I understand this. None of this 183 was scheduled work, this would all be under a new change order?
Well, we don't have a contract with TNT, the regular, that's why it's not a change order, this would be a contract with TNT for the work.
But it is additional work that wasn't planned for.
It would be a change to the project budget, cause you remember we had the proposal from Renaissance for $269,000, I think is what.
212 on the tuck pointing and masonry work with their masonry subcontractor that didn't include the repinning of some of these capstones and face stones. So we reached out to a local mason to get an alternate pricing, which as you can see, including some additional work, is still well under the 212 that they originally proposed. So we're elected to propose going with.
How close are we to finishing the project in entirety? I mean, do you have any idea of how many additional change orders from now until that happens? I mean, can we expect a lot more? And it would be nice if maybe you guys could put together all the additional change orders so far so we could see that.
Sure.
So we don't remember.
Yeah, I can speak with Eric.
I think the only one that you mentioned that we will still expect a change order is the additional fastening pattern on the tie downs on the roof, right? Other than that, you don't really see anything more coming.
Yeah, it's with the historic preservation project, until we tear something off, we don't know for sure. But given the fact in the areas that we have done tear off on, I think we've gotten into most of the critical components. And again, Renaissance has been a fantastic partner in this. They are making amazing recommendations for kind of the Cadillac option on everything, and we want to evaluate and bring those there. So I do not want to say that we shouldn't do it the way that Renaissance has done, just given what the budget is. We also want to look at what's a kind of good, kind of best dollar for value. So I can't say for sure, but I think that we have, kind of looking at what we've looked at around, Brandon's been up, Eric's been up, we've had multiple evaluations, including our structural engineer. I think that we have hit most of the kind of big question marks. So the only thing that we anticipate right now is the additional fasteners. And from a timing standpoint, I don't think we've impacted their schedule, because they've been able to work on the clock tower roof, but we did get a note from Tom Bunders, their on-site foreman, that, now they're getting close to, we need some of these decisions made, and that's why we're kind of coming at you with a lot, because that pull testing and the replacement of those batten system was kind of a critical path item, so a lot of these things are kind of coming into place now. TNT does have time in the schedule and will be ready to start this work yet this fall. I imagine if we approve it, they'd be here next week, so.
Do you have a more detailed breakdown of TNT's costs? I mean, looking at the bid, the only thing that's broken out is that $12,000 painting. So,
We can request that.
I mean, I don't need it, I just wanna make sure that you guys have it.
Yeah, so what we would do is that, into the question of, this is not technically a change order to the project, since we did reserve the right to bring in our own contractors to perform some work. The only work that TNT has that's directly interfacing with the work that Renaissance is doing would be the anchoring and the tie back with that stitch tie that we sent over. Other than that, their work is mainly in the clock tower, and that's, just as we were up there, we have access. This would be a good time to do it. One of the things that we negotiated with Renaissance was to be able to have access to their scaffolding to do work that we wanted to do. And that scaffolding, if you recall, was probably about a $350,000 portion of the project. So this is money well leveraged at this point versus leaving it for a couple of years and then coming back and having to do it. I won't say, there's degradation and there's work that should be done now before it becomes a bigger issue on the clock tower, and this would be the time to do it if the funds are available.
Thank you.
And I saw that Renaissance has agreed, so there's an agreement with Renaissance and TNT for usage of the scaffold, and TNT was gonna make some modifications, they have to do some additional work, but that's in their bid to do all that, and they've got their licensed scaffolder and.
Correct. That's our understanding. We need to get a verification. Renaissance hopefully will be amenable to this, and they have asked for some additional documentation, certificate of insurance, release of liability from TNT. I shared that with TNT, and they said they had no issues with it. They have certified scaffolding instructors, so we will need to do the final agreement with Renaissance, and assume there'll be a little conversation on that, but I think that from a contractual standpoint, we're covered, and we provided them everything they've asked for to move forward with this.
So the agreement with TNT is not the 167,450, it'd be 183,262.
With that tie-in.
And that includes the stitch tie.
Correct. Yep.
We had them feverishly working on that final amount late last week, and so we didn't get that till this weekend. We had the original 169, and we were gonna discuss, there would be some more coming, but they got it to us over the weekend, so they were able to add it for the total of 183.
And just to so what we would do then with TNT, if this is approved, is we would move forward, do a separate AIA contract with them, in which they would give us a schedule of values, which give a breakdown of the totals on the cost as well. So I think to make sure that we answered that question.
Okay.
I'll move.
All right, so I have a motion by Danny,
Second.
second by Nathan. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same? Motion carries. Anything else, Mike?
Okay, no, I think that's it for today. So this will hopefully clear the path out. The last piece that we'll have, most likely I'll just pass this along to Eric, is once we get that fastening reinforcement proposal from the structural engineer, we'll coordinate that with Renaissance, we'll review it with them, come up with a fair cost, and then.
And that we'll expect is on the lower portion on the corners.
Correct, yes, on the lower edges and on the corners. So there's continuous 2x4 underneath. So what we are gonna look at is basically doing a little bit of countersink, put a fastener in, and then they ought to be able to roof right over top of it. So we can't guarantee it will be inexpensive, but we'll make sure that it's a fair cost when we get that back.
Yeah. Okay,
Okay? I think that's it.
thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Item number 6 is discussion possible action to accept the following report. The county auditor report of fees collected for the quarter ended September 30th, 2024 in the amount of $1,831.
So moved.
Have a motion by Scott,
I'll second.
second by Danny. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Item B is county treasurer's report of fees collected for the quarter ending September 30th, 2024 in the amount of $784,776.86.
So moved.
A motion by Nathan and a second by Scott. Kayla, do you recall what our budgeted interest was in the treasurer's office for the year? I don't recall. Six? And then this, I don't remember, this week, you might, okay. I'll look at my budget book. I was thinking about that this weekend, okay. I mean, with the rate reductions, we're seeing some Fed rate reductions, we'll anticipate that our interest income, I would say, in the treasurer's office would be diminishing as we move forward.
And we're spending down the ARPA funds.
And we're spending down that $8 million that was sitting there drawing a lot of interest, right? Now, does that interest, does that get attributed back to the ARPA, or does that just go to
It's
general
free and clear to us,
fund?
isn't it?
It goes into the ARPA fund, but we can use it for whatever.
It hasn't had the same restrictions of the base dollars. Okay,
And we don't have any projects that we're worried about not being able to get them all under contract by the end of the year.
There's two of the Deep Lakes Park campground. We're still waiting on signed contracts by the end of the year, and then also the Community Foundation's, housing project.
yeah, we had a meeting last week, and
Sounds like they got
Ron
everything.
assures that they're on target, so what we can do is say, watch the date and stay on track. Okay, so I have a motion. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Okay, the next item 7 is discussion possible action approved resolution 1007-2402 suspending collection of taxes. You should add the notes in.
Yeah, that was in there. I'll move.
A motion by Danny.
Second.
Second by Kurt. This is a roll call vote. Scott?
Aye.
Nathan?
Aye.
I vote aye. Danny?
Aye.
And Kurt?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 8 is discussion possible action to approve the minutes from September 30th, 2024 regular meeting.
Move to approve.
I have a motion by Scott,
Second.
second by Kurt. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Item number 9, correspondence. Scott, did you have any correspondence?
I had nothing to note on correspondence.
Nathan?
Nor did I.
Okay.
Well, actually, you know what, I'm sorry, I should say, not sure whether to call this correspondence, but I got, Eric Sanders forwarded, kind of an attaboy that we got, recognizing a couple folks in our, community services department, who were with an individual at the hospital, until very late, I believe one night, a week and a half ago. Got personal thanks from the physician and the individual, so just wanted to thank our community services personnel.
Good. I'll let Kurt, you talk about the letter that you shared with the board.
Yeah, I received from a couple residents on, we're gonna rebuild electrical high line coming south of West Liberty, 5.5 miles, I think it is. And so I brought that to the board's
Yeah,
attention.
I have a document here. Kurt brought a copy of the letter.
There is a
Mike,
meeting at the community center in community center in West Liberty on October 30th at 5:30, discussing this, approximately an hour meeting. So if anyone's interested in that.
Okay. And then, I had a number of items on the 1st of October. I was with a group that are talking about opportunities, for grant opportunities and such for the Ports Initiative, which we haven't, this week we're putting that group together, so it sounds like the Muscatine crew has a whole list of ideas that they wanna start pursuing, so we'll see where that goes. On the 1st, also attended an open house for the Muscatine Health Clinic, the new clinic. I don't know if anybody went to the grand opening, the ribbon cutting. It's a fantastic facility and a great resource for the community, and I look forward to many years of service there. Then we had on the 2nd Housing Council, and again on the 4th, another meeting on the port issues for Muscatine. Danny?
On the 30th, I had an invite from Megan Francis at Crossroads. She wanted to share their services, so I had a better understanding of it. So I had an hour meeting with her on the 30th. I attended that private donor open house with you on the 1st at the new clinic. On 11/2, I attended the Muscatine County Health Assessment presentation. Jeff was at that also.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
And there was a lot of good information there that they shared about how our community rates with others on health issues, you know, from diabetes to heart disease to you name it, all the gambit across the board. So they shared a lot of good information. Then on the 3rd, I attended the new health clinic ribbon cutting. And then for committee reports, I seen you mention that. On the 2nd, I attended the Housing Council.
Kurt,
I had no correspondence, well, other than the byline.
how about community reports?
I had no committee reports.
Danny? We
Just-
kinda
just that
conflated
housing-
them, the
Just that
housing
housing
council,
council, I
yeah.
kinda included it in there.
I did too, the housing council, that's all I had. Nathan?
No, I did not have anything last week.
And
I did
Scott?
not have anything either.
Okay. Item 11 is items with the administration office. Review the health and dental fund balance as of September 30, 2024.
Copy,
That looks a little better, doesn't it?
yeah, it does, although I just got the bill on Saturday for, October, and we're going the other way a bit, so.
Yeah, it looks like health payments still continue to
Yeah.
be a bit of a risk in our, we've got a strong balance in the fund, which is a good thing, but, our costs are exceeding our premiums, so.
And we did just get the actuarial, every year we have to have an actuarial done. It's required by the state of Iowa because we're self-funded entities, so every year we have to have an actuarial done, submit it to the state, and then the state determines whether they're gonna let us be self-insured for another year. The actuarial basically came back and said what you just said, that we're not bringing in enough revenue to cover our expenditures, but our fund balance is still healthy, so, hopefully with the rate increases that we did July 1st, we'll see that settle out a little closer, but.
Yeah, I don't remember, I did the math on it, we were close, but
Yeah.
not, we were still gonna be draining, but I don't think it puts us in great risk. And I wasn't sure if the new payments were into the numbers, yeah, they should have been in the last month or so. but-
Yeah, not.
And it was
we're-
better in the last
Yeah,
month.
we're barely, the new payments didn't start, until July, so,
Yeah. You make your best guess.
yep, we'll keep watching it and.
And you're always behind the curve on it, on where it's gonna shake out.
It's never getting cheaper though.
Unfortunately. Okay, anything else, Nancy?
No.
Item number 12 is to receive comments from county employees. Any county employees want to address the board? Eric?
I just wanted to give a little shout out to a couple other county employees as this courthouse project has gone on. It's been a lot. It's almost daily that we're having correspondence with Renaissance. Like Mike touched on, it's a historic building, even though they did a pretty thorough evaluation when they gave us the initial proposal for the re-roof. There was a tremendous amount of things underneath that even they couldn't see without destructive investigation, you know, so I know we're always concerned, Danny, to your point about change orders, because they are expensive, they add up very quickly, they're always at a higher labor rate than we want. But it's been a lot, and I wanted to just throw a shout out to Brandon from my office. He's been helping me with this. He came to us, he's one of my building inspectors, came to us from Hoffman as a project manager, worked with Jim previously, so he really understands construction contracts, change orders. Doesn't mind the heights quite as much as I do, so he's been up there a lot. We really do tag team on this a lot. When we get a call from their foreman that, hey, need you to come down and look at something, depending on which one of us is closer, I have full faith in Brandon. I can send him down there. He's probably been up on the roof as much or more than I have. We get calls from Oscar, who's done a great job keeping, you know, remember this building we've had to keep open with barricades and safety netting and try to ensure the safety of the public coming and going and keep the workflow going. So Oscar's been a good feedback, hey, this netting needs to be pulled back up, or I see this going on. It's really been a team effort, and so I just wanted to shout out to Oscar and Brandon, the communication. It's working, it's challenging keeping that building open, materials coming across the street, pedestrians coming and going. You know, we took a lot of steps to keep noise to a minimum, where to set certain parts of the scaffolding, the Bocker lift as it relates to courtrooms. Initially, we had many meetings with the clerk's office on how we were gonna handle all this, but it's not just been me managing this, and so I wanted to give a shout out to some of our other county employees too that have done a good job, because I couldn't do it all. It's a lot, and so I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, and I'll say that, you know, over the years, and that, you know, as we get into these large projects, this has always been a challenge for the board and administration to manage. And I think that the process that we've used in the last year to two have really facilitated them, you know, kind of Eric and Oscar tag teaming it and working with that.
And most of the time, that has worked really well. Not that it's not working this time, but I know that this has put kind of an incredible amount of additional work on Eric because of the size of this project, so.
Yeah, well, it's, you know, you're looking at a $3 million project, so it's not, you know, everybody's like, oh, you just gotta do it. And it's like, well, you don't, I think you realize how long it takes to spend $3 million. There's a lot of moving parts, there's a lot of pieces, there's a lot of people. It's not just wasted money, so.
Well, and we're all very conscientious about, nobody wants to drop the ball on anything here. I mean, we could have a big problem right away if we drop the ball with a huge delay in the project, so.
Yeah.
A lot of this has been, you gotta respond when this is happening. It's not something you say, I'll get to it next Tuesday, so.
Yeah, that's the problem with construction projects, is every delay costs you money, because you
And
put
that's
your.
where it's been nice to have staff that I can trust, because if I'm in a zoning commission meeting all morning and they call, I can send Brandon over there and have full faith and confidence that he'll relay back to me, or even make some decisions on their own that need to be made, and that's why I just wanted to throw a shout out.
And just as someone who frequently uses the courthouse, I can say that there's been, other than having to walk slightly to the left to get in, you don't notice it. You really don't notice it once you're inside, so kudos to everybody there. I mean, the demolition of that building by the Flickinger Center was more annoying for court personnel and people trying to get to the courthouse than this has been.
Well, wait till they start working on the roof. It might
Well, you
change,
know.
might change a little bit. Gonna get
You
loud.
don't have to tear off that whole bat and
Yeah.
system, it's like,
Yeah. Okay. Tybee?
Good morning. I just want to make a few election date announcements. The first day that early voting will start is October 16th. So that's next week, Wednesday, October 16th. In the auditor's office, you can early vote starting at 8 a.m. We're open 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. That'll run from October 16th through November 4th. By law, we're also open 8 hours the Saturday before the election. So on November 2nd, we will be open 9 to 5. And then also, we've been petitioned to hold a satellite voting center, and that will be Sunday, October 27th at the West Liberty Library. And voting will be from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. And also, if you've submitted your absentee ballot request form, we have received it, they get put in our system, but we cannot mail ballots until October 16th. So that seemed to be a very common question. Why have I sent in my form, but I haven't gotten a ballot yet? That's because October 16th will be the first day that we can mail them. One other important date is with absentee ballot request forms, be sure and submit those to my office, the auditor's office, by Monday, October 21st, 5 p.m. After that date, we can no longer receive a request form. So you have any questions?
So
Still- go ahead.
5 PM on the 21st is the last date of, that your office, they have to be received in your office by that day, not postmarked, but actually physically in your office.
Yes.
Okay.
Still need poll workers?
We have set the poll worker assignments. We can always use more poll workers that are on the substitute list, for as cancellations do happen.
Wow.
And we do like to train some additional workers for that.
Congratulations. That's great.
Yeah, I'm very thankful. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Peggy. Any other county employees? Any members of the public wishing to address the board? Seeing no one come forward, the meeting is adjourned.